I'm hosting this conversation on behalf of Sacred Space. The theme is Inspired to Act, and it's just looking at what motivates people to work for the common good.
My second son, Alex, said to me, he said, Louise and I are getting married, congratulations, and we want you to do the wedding. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you've always enjoyed, I was a head teacher for 16 years, you've always enjoyed the assemblies, and you're a humanist. And I said, a humanist? And he said, yes. So I looked up humanist on Google, and yeah, I'm an atheist, and I believe that we should try to lead good lives. So, cut a long story short, I did the training. I was able to do an unofficial wedding of them. Couldn't do the full wedding because the church blocks us from doing that still. But anyway, I did that, and I went on, and now I'm a trained celebrant. So I lead funerals, about 120 a year.
Wow.
Namings, a dozen or so a year. Weddings, a dozen or so a year. And I'm also, at the moment, chairman of Coventry and Warwickshire Humanists.
I'm Janey. I've lived in Coventry since I was about 4. I'm a retired teacher. My subject was English, but I was the EAL coordinator. So I taught English, humanities, especially RE, history, IT, anything anybody else wouldn't teach. But I was always teaching English through the medium of, if you see what I mean.
Right, yeah.
And a bit like Bob, I do ceremonies for pagan people. We do hand fastings and, you know, all that sort of thing, funerals. I'm quite active in Coventry Community Forum. So in a very real way, I think I probably also represent other worldviews as well, because I think the pagan point of view is just starting to come forward.
I've lived in Coventry for over, must be coming on to 60 years now. Came from the Caribbean, a small island called Nevis.
Right.
Yeah, my dad came here first, and I am a product of the Windrush generation that you've probably heard a lot about recently.
Yes.
And which I'm a great campaigner in at the moment. I've been a member of mystical orders for about 40 years, and again, outside of mainstream religion. Reason I was drawn to that was, as you know, most Caribbean families are very religious, and my mum insisted we went to church morning, noon and night on a Sunday, which I quite enjoyed. But I must admit, when I got to about my 20s and life, you start thinking about life and so forth, I always felt as if something was missing in the church.
Right.
And that brought me to, somebody introduced me to the Rosicrucian order at the time. I was a bit reluctant, but something innate told me to, you know, to pursue.
Yeah.
And I must admit, the minute I opened the introduction, innately I knew that's what I was looking for, and I've never turned back.
Wow.
The reason why I found it interesting and worthwhile was it was non-sectarian and not full of dogma. It was an opportunity for the individual to develop themselves.
So now we're moving more into talking a little bit more in depth about your belief systems and how the beliefs that you hold. Just to tell us a little bit more about the beliefs that you hold.
There was something deeply inside of me that wasn't being fulfilled, if you know what I mean, with religion. Yeah. It was too much on the surface.
Yeah.
It's somebody else telling you.
Yeah.
And what the order did for me is that inner search.
Yeah.
So I was able to develop my own conscious awareness of life and what religion means, actually. It didn't actually sway me away from it. It helped me to understand it. I think the only thing in the Bible that I found profound is where Christ said, the kingdom of God is within you. And that's what I actually found was very true in this type of system that I worked with, because the answers are within you. I quite enjoy all the different faiths. And I think, again, what the order teaches is they've actually taken the best from each for you to kind of explore.
In fact, I describe myself as a pragmatic Wiccan druid with shamanic leanings and an interest in heathenry, which is pretty eclectic. Like a lot of pagans, a lot of pagans tend to have these sort of wide interests within the spiritual path. What led me to it was probably a need for sanity. You know, all sorts of experiences had put a lot of stress on me, and I'd found life quite difficult. And what I found worked for me was paganism. So in different ways, really. One of them is that paganism is rooted in reality. You know, we follow the wheel of the year. Our festivals are all about what's happening now. You know, when we do magic and things, that tends to follow the path of the moon. So it's very much rooted in reality. And yet it has this real, you know, like, I really identify with what Jean was saying about the sort of inner spiritual experience. It's quite an open path as well, and I like that. Yeah. So it does allow you a bit, sounds like the Rosicrucians, it does allow you to rather pick and choose. And it does mean that we're quite tolerant towards other people's religions, because I think you have to honour and acknowledge that their religion is just as valid as yours. You know, and that tends to be something that helps you along the path to peace, that you get out of life what you put in. If you put in good stuff, you get good stuff out. If you put in bad stuff, you get bad stuff out. So you become very motivated to put in the good stuff because you want to live a good life. And I think that's probably a central, I bet we can all agree on that, you know, that's a central belief of all religion, you know, that you should do as you would be done by. And they call it the golden rule, don't they? I think that's the reason for that.
My experience of religion wasn't good. I didn't feel in these people who were disciples of religion, I didn't feel humanity or kindness. You see, those basic human sentiments that you'd want. So I began to think about things, and I have become an atheist. We're told we shouldn't say we're atheists, but we should admit to there being a very slight possibility of a God. So, if that's the way you are, you should be an agnostic. So, all right. But I'm very near to being, you know, 100% thinking that I'm an atheist. So, and so now I do the celebrants work, and I'm trained by Humanist UK. And yeah, here's the thing. I don't see any evidence for religion, and I don't have any faith. Faith is the people who say you don't need evidence, you believe it in here. Well, I don't.
It's interesting, the general theme of humanity and kindness, though, that's coming through from all three of you in terms of how you carry yourself in the world, and how your beliefs, whatever they might be, hold you to a standard, I suppose. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
I think the words I would use, I don't think I am a good person, but my beliefs make me think that I need to be better. I'm a long way from being a good person, and I look around and I see in each of the religions, for example, the people in the mosques who are gathering food for the impoverished at the moment, the people in the Gurdwaras who are, the people who are down at the food banks. from all of the churches. There are good people there. And so, I mean, I would never profess to being a good person, but, you know, I think it's beholden on all of us to try to be better.
I think we're all a bit of a work in progress, aren't we, to some extent?
Yes, because it's those things, I believe, from the teachings that come from the heart. And when you work from the heart center, as it were, does it matter after that, you know, whether, and sometimes to the onlooker, you may not be so good, because sometimes there's things you have to do that to the world doesn't appear that good, but your conscience, I believe you have to go with, and it doesn't always resonate with everyone, and that's the side of what I learn that keeps you sort of individual and work from your own consciousness, if you like. And the pagans, I mean, lots of the Rosicrucian teachings came from paganism, you know, so following nature and the way it works. Shamanism. In fact, if you look at all those other beliefs, you know, belief systems, they concur with each other quite well, don't they? They run alongside of and complement each other. There's nothing, you know, it's the dogma of religion, I think people get stuck with.
Somebody mentioned earlier on, somebody mentioned the golden rule. Was it you, Janey?
Yep.
Yeah. You know, treat others as you want to be treated yourself, or something like that. Yeah. And I mean, absolutely. That's from any faith. Actually, I think there's evidence of it in Christianity, in Islam. I guess there would be in Sikhism, but I don't know enough about it to
every religion.
Yeah. So there is that there. But the difference is that we don't believe, humanists don't believe in the supernatural. Not gods, not goblins, not ghosts. We don't believe in the supernatural. We think it can be explained eventually by science. We don't know the answers yet, but that's what the search is, to explain our world through science. So that's the difference between us, I think.
Well, no, not necessarily. You know, pagans will, you know, I think I've got a friend who regularly says that magic is science we don't understand yet. And very often it's almost like a shorthand. Quite an interesting thing I've done recently, talking about how you teach children about talking to fairies, but in fact it's a way of teaching manners. You know, it's teaching people to be respectful and to show respect before they meet a situation where it's important. And who knows, you know, these things may or may not exist. They're part of our spiritual wealth.
Can I just move on to the next question, just to build from what you were saying, and just to delve a little bit deeper? What is it about your beliefs that gives you hope?
My greatest learning was about death. I could never understand from a young age, you know, the purpose of living and then just dying, done. So that set me on a great search for understanding that. You know, I went through quite a bit of trauma to get to understand. And I think that was one of my greatest learnings, as I said. When my best friend, she was an English girl. We went to school together all through our junior, senior school, and her grand died, who I knew well. As soon as I heard she died, I didn't want to know my friend again, because death to me was just a darkness that there was no sense to it. But as I grew up and had my daughter, I thought, gosh, one day somebody's going to go in the family, my mom, my dad, whatever. So that sort of set me on my search. And when it was Buddhism that did it, actually, in terms of reincarnation. For me, that's the only thing that made any sense. The resurrection thing, you know, everybody stored up there for billions of years, what are they doing? But reincarnation made a whole heap of sense in that it was life continuous. And I must admit, the quote in the Bible where Christ said, look at the birds and in the trees, or all the trees rather, they keep reproducing their leaves. What greater, you know, being man, you're greater than that sort of thing. So I thought, yes, I mean, we watch the trees renew their leaves every spring, whatever, and that could be termed as magic. You know, so something's at work. And going a little touching on the magic bit, there is magic in the universe. There's magic if you understand it, and it's a noetic experience. You have to actually experience it to know it.
Jean, in terms of what motivates you into action, what is it that motivates you?
All through my life, that has been a predominant part of it.
Okay.
That it's justice for myself, justice for others, fairness of what's right and wrong. In life, we're all equal, and no one should think themselves superior than another person. I think COVID has actually showed us that. And if people haven't learned the lesson from what's happening, I don't think we'll ever learn it again.
I think just somebody will come along and do something. Marcus Rashford, you know, going to change things so that kids who need a school meal right through the summer holidays get one. That's an individual just taking a stand. Don't need to be in awe of any gods. The people around us are quite enough for that, and you can see them at their at work. Belief in the people and real hope in science. Those are the two things that, you know, spur me on.
I think one of the things that spurs pagans to action is firstly a feeling that action is possible. I don't think pagans live in awe of the gods or the other beings. You know, many of us are animists and believe in the life force of everything. I don't think we're in awe, but we do find ourselves as part of that. You know, there are people who'll give you long diatribes about how pagans do not kneel to their gods. I know that one of the things that motivated me with things like Peace Jam was seeing the difficult lives that children were leading. I dealt with some children who were very violent, and you know, their violence does not work for them. It doesn't make their lives better in any way. It doesn't make life better for anyone. Being feared is not the thing that kids hope it will be. It doesn't bring you what you hope for. But in fact, Peace Jam really offered that to them. So I suppose pagans tend to be quite practical, and we get the tools to do things, and then we try and do them.
So just moving on to the last question, and it links back to something you said, Jean, about the situation with COVID-19 in this year. So it's really to ask you what changes post COVID-19, whenever that might be, do you hope to see? What do you want to continue or do differently? And in your life beyond this time of lockdown, what are your hopes for that?
Because the world has to keep addressing these unfair practices that we tend to keep continuing and not learning the lesson. Nature is always showing us the balance. And COVID for me has flagged up all these unjust, unfair imbalances in life. What is heartening about COVID for me was, you know, suddenly entrepreneurs were able to come out, find money to house the homeless. People were bending over themselves to give people food who hadn't had food before. And all sorts of human kindnesses have come out of COVID. And all sorts of human tragedies as well. Because I could think of nothing worse than that killing in America. And it's, you know, where we knocked the social media, how handy it has become now for all that we do.
Absolutely.
So if we learn to use things responsibly and for the betterment of all.
Mhm.
That's the sort of lovely world I would like to see.
But listen, it'll be forgotten. You know, the student nurses at the moment and the health service workers, they won't get the pay rises they deserve, because remember, the politicians who gave us the age of austerity, you know, they're still around, and they'll be looking for a new age of austerity from most of us to pay for the spending, to pay for the support that they're about to give to the companies and so on. Difficult questions, but I don't think people have changed, I'm afraid. Help each other move on to a better life, help each other find peace once more. All of those things are ongoing. You used the expression earlier, ongoing works, those are. I think science proved the need for the lockdown earlier than it came. And recently, one of the top scientists said, if we'd done it a week earlier, half the lives lost would have been saved. So, yeah, it's back to this, do we learn the lessons or not?
Well, one thing that's heartened me during the lockdown is hearing so many people who've reconnected with their home, partly
because they had to.
stuck in it for several weeks. And one of the central things about paganism, we don't have churches and buildings. We generally have our own hearth. Is a really important thing. So I think people connecting with their own hearth is important, and also the other place that pagans worship is around and about, you know, in special places, parks and hillsides and bits of farmland, and things become special because people go and visit them a lot and then go back to them, and maybe it's repetition. Probably that makes them special and sacred. And it does strike me that a lot of people have started to reconnect with their own local area and to feel that that numinous sense of what their local wood is like at certain times of the day. And I hope that continues, because we need to look after our world and look after each other. The other thing for me has been the blueness of the sky.
Yes,
and realize how wonderful it was when we didn't have lots of aeroplanes, and the effect that has had.
What the three of you have done is describe the myriad way of looking at the world, and I think it's really important that we keep doing that. That doesn't mean we're better than or lesser than. It's about showing that we all have humanity at the heart of everything that we do. So thank you for that.